coffee, big cup, and hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Gilmore Way Podcast, the last in our series about cheating. I'm Laura.
And I'm Kate. We spent the last few weeks really taking a close look at infidelity, both in the real world and on the show, and how cultural differences impact the way we view relationships and family on the show. We've covered Richard and Penelon, Paris and Asher, Luke and Nicole, Lorelai and Christopher, and Rory and Dean in the last three parts. This week, we're going to be looking at Rory and Logan in season 6 and A Year in the Life. The cheating plotline for them in the revival is highly controversial, and I may have a more nuanced and empathetic take than most. So I personally can't wait to dig into all of the details of this. I feel like this is going to get contentious because I'm Team Logan and you're Team Jess.
Yeah, well, at least one of us picked the right winning side. But anyhow, before we...
Only one of us has the mug.
No. Mm-hmm. All right. Before we get into the fun and friendly catfighting amongst these teams, this is your friendly reminder that this is a spoilers all podcast. We will be discussing anything and everything from the show. So if you have not watched it or you want to tune out now, go catch up on those episodes and then come back and revisit this episode. And please do all of those YouTube things for us. Please like this video, subscribe to our channel, drop us a comment. If you're Team Jess, Team Logan, Team Dean, just let us know where you fall on these guys. And if you have any comments about cheating and infidelity on the whole, we'd love to hear your spicy takes as well. And on a personal note, this is just also a reminder that I have recently acquired a new fur baby who is currently pretending to sleep right now. I will say like that, but I make no promises that he will not be active during this recording. So if you hear kitty noises in the background, it is what it is, folks. Newest member of the TGW fam.
Or it's just us hissing at each other.
Also potentially likely to happen.
I speak cat. Anyway. All right. I'm going to start this off with an informational foundation because I think it's important that we're all aware of the actual timeline of how these things happened. Okay. So I'm going to go through a little bit by bit history of Rory and Logan. They met in season 3, episode 5, which aired October 5th, 2004. The first 2 episodes of that series were May and then August or September. So this is their first day back at school, or first week back at school. Their first kiss and when they almost hook up is not until Wedding Bell Blues, which is February 8th, 2005. They hook up finally in Jews and Chinese Food, which was February 22nd, 2005. They become official and she meets his family on April 26th. At least if we're going by release dates, those are the rough times that those big events happen. So they casually dated for about 2 months, maybe a little bit less, before Rory offers that sort of I can't do the casual thing anymore. And Logan takes her up on it and is like, yeah, let's try this out. Okay. So, and according to the show release schedule, the yacht incident happened around May 10th, which tracks with a June 3rd court date. That's pretty typical for a first appearance. Although the thing about that is that here's our first disconnect, if you will. It happens May 10th on the show, in real life. But given that Rory's not done with finals yet, I'm wondering if it's still April. So it's end of April, beginning of... But she must have been at the paper for a while. So I'm when do Yale's finals run? Anyway, kind of neither here nor there. So that's May of 2005. June is her court date. Logan's in Europe for the summer. So that skips us ahead to October 2005. Okay. This is beginning of season 6 or early season 6. Canonically, Rory's birthday, per the invitation from season 1, is October 8th. Okay? October 8th. but it doesn't show up in the show until the 25th. Because like the way that the release schedule for season 6 goes, her birthday party episode 21 is the loneliest number. It's October 25th. In the meanwhile, like at the beginning of October, the USO event with Shira was apparently around October 11th. Or like that was the release date for that episode, October 11th. October 18th was Welcome to the Dollhouse, where Logan has the nightcap with Richard and he asks about Rory and their relationship and stuff, and Logan thinks it's the intentions talk. So that's mid-October, October 18th. The 21st birthday party falls on the 25th, but I'm assuming a lot of this is happening truly in September, early October. But this is where the timeline gets nuts, okay? In Balalaikas is when Jess shows back up. This episode airs November 8th. But if you'll recall, when Jess comes in to Rory's room in the big main house, he sees the dress for the Russian tea on the back of her door, and he says, "Is that for Halloween?" Implying that Halloween hasn't happened yet. Later in the episode, he also says, "Your birthday, wasn't it a couple weeks ago?" So I'm thinking this actually happens in Showtime mid to late October. Okay, and then we have The Prodigal Daughter Returns, which is episode 9. Rory moves out of the Gilmore house, goes to Stars Hollow to live with Lane, spends a few days trying to weasel her way into the Stanford Eagle Gazette, and talks to the people at Yale about going back next semester. So that all seems to happen within a span of a couple of days. Then she reunites with Lorelai at the end. Next episode after that is He's Slippin' 'em Bread Dig, which is the Thanksgiving episode. And so Thanksgiving that year, in real time, was November 24th. Obviously, y'all have late November Thanksgiving there, okay? So Balalaikas happens before Halloween. So we have this really strange gap in time. The show never addresses that time lapse. But if my calculations are correct, Rory and Logan were dating for about 6 or before Jess comes to town. And things blow up, right? Especially if you count, or more if you count their unofficial time where they're seeing each other beforehand. And I think that is the key when thinking about whether or not Logan cheated on Rory. Because we have her the following February in the Bridesmaids Revisited episode talking to Honor's bridesmaids. First of all, the plan was not for her to be in the bridal suite with the girls. So Logan may not have anticipated her having alone time with them where they would divulge such things to her in the first place. She's like, "Oh, you just let me walk in here. You were going to go to the library and work." And then Honor was like, "You have to be my designated dresser." So like she was never in the wedding party. She wasn't intended to be a plan there. So no, Logan did not let her, or like knowingly let her go into that room being like, "Oh, she's going to be hanging out with these bridesmaids all day." No, he thought that they were maybe going to see each other or meet each other at the wedding, but that they would never divulge such information at the wedding itself. So he didn't knowingly allow her to get dumped on by them. And two, if all of that stuff that happens in Balalaikas happened before Halloween and he hasn't heard from her until Thanksgiving, yeah, they're broken up. And he doesn't hook up with the first girl until Thanksgiving. All right, that's the end of my history lesson. So come on in here with some of your initial thoughts on the whole bridesmaid situation now that you have all the info.
Sounds like a bunch of excuses going on over there. I don't care. Like that Logan thought that she was not going to be in the suite. Excuses, excuses, excuses. she was there. She's now privy to some intel. And he immediately is just like, oh, well, I didn't know that you were ever going to hear about that. You know, I was never going to tell you anyway. So right off the bat, just a lot of secrecy going on with him not being forthcoming about how he has chosen to spend his time, especially considering that she still thinks that they are together, even though he is of the mindset that we are on a break. I don't, you know, if one party thinks one thing and another party thinks another, you need to be cognizant of that. There needed to be better communication on the whole, but him coming and saying, I never expected you to hear that. I was probably never going to tell you anyway. Okay. You know, just fine with the secrecy. It's cool. You know, whatever. And that's my sarcastic way of saying, like, no, it's not. Now she's having to contend with knowing that, like, you have been a busy man for a couple of weeks. You know, he gets around and, you know, sows his wild oats, you know, has some fun, which, again, had there been a distinct indication that it was over and had that communication been made to Rory about how, hey, we're taking some time apart to reevaluate what are we comfortable with in terms of, are we going to see and or sleep with other people during this time? Let's try and like get on the same page with that. Okay, then you can go and just, you know, hook up with like 10,000 bridesmaids if you want to. I don't care, but you didn't. And now Rory is having to contend with the fact that you were distruthful to her. You did not tell her what was going on. You misled her into thinking that you were taking some time apart, but that you were not going to potentially be seeing and or sleeping with other people in the interim. And now she's having to come back and question, I know you hate the word, but why were you not faithful? Why were we not communicating better? Granted, she could have done better with that as well. But Logan turned into just, you know, your playboy who is going to just, you know, have his fun with no regard to the fact that you still have someone waiting for you who is thinking that you are on an entirely different playing field than the ball game that you are at. She's at one in the Bronx. You're at the other in Citi Field. Get on the same page, ride the subway together, and work it out and talk.
Are we going to a Mets game or a Yankees game? Yeah, but that's the thing. It's like Rory never takes any accountability for the fact that she ghosted her boyfriend for a month. Like, if you hadn't heard from your significant other for a month, or you hadn't reached out to them, what does that say to you? What do you expect? Like, yeah, I agree that they should have said to each other, like, they should have set parameters. That would have been the mature thing to do. But we know we're dealing with two immature people. That doesn't mean that it's like unforgivable cheating, because I think that if you've gone that long, like that lack of anything for a month, Rory couldn't even reach out to be like, hey, want to grab coffee? Or hey, we need to talk about our status. Like, I know we haven't spoken in a while.
He didn't either.
Yeah, I know. But like, that doesn't give Rory she doesn't own him. If she is not putting in the work to facilitate this relationship, what's he supposed to expect? I totally agree they should have both handled it differently and more maturely. But this is why we have Logan coming to her saying, look, I hadn't heard from you. And like, in my mind, we were not together. He told Honor.
In his mind. In his mind.
Hey,
did not
they
confirm.
Had broken. He told Honor, because she was bugging him, that they had broken up. And Honor called Rory. Rory did not correct her. She was taken aback, but I don't think she should have been. I think when it's been weeks since you've talked to your partner, like, what do they owe you after that? If you're not willing to even talk to them, what do they owe you in that moment? Like, again, it's not a good scenario. It's not mature. But Logan is inexperienced in relationships. I have more notes on this later, but like, look at his parents. Jeez, like, he has not had good modeling for relationships either. His dad is constantly cheating on his mom, as Emily so rightly points out to us at the DAR event. So like, he's ill-equipped for this. He doesn't know what he's doing. But Rory, as the one who is like, she's the relationship girl. She's the one who like pursued this and told him that she couldn't do the casual thing. She knows what he's like. And then all of a sudden, when she's not paying attention to him, but he's living his own life and soothing his emotions the way that he knows how, then she gets mad because she couldn't say anything to him. He comes home from Nebraska. He's been on 2 planes in less than 24 hours. He comes home to find her with her ex, and she hasn't told him about it. I mean, granted, like, she probably figured he was busy and that she'd fill him in later, but how do we know she ever would have told him about Jess in the first place? So he comes home to find her with an ex, and then he gets all butthurt. They fight. He storms out and is just like, I'm done with this. I'm leaving. And then neither of them talk to each other for several weeks. Like, what? Like, again, if you were in their position in real life, we as viewers know what happens and can see the whole picture. But like, imagine you're in that scenario and you haven't heard from someone in weeks. What would you think? You'd be like, F them. I'm doing whatever I want, because they're not going to be mature enough to be a part of this conversation. And so eventually Rory takes him back after she gets some clarity on his feelings for her, and he takes that time to process and get over this. But like, you know, when they've had this massive fight and nobody's talking to each other, I kind of think he's right to think that they're broken up, and it's within his bounds of reason to say that, you know, his perspective was that they were broken up. And so he didn't think he was doing anything wrong. He wasn't knowingly, actively betraying her or like cheating on her because he thought they were broken up. She hadn't said anything to him. He hadn't said anything to her. Nothing had progressed. That feels like a relationship that is over.
You know what could have fixed that? A 5-second text or a 5-second phone call just to be like, hey, what's up? Are we done? What's going on here? Because I haven't heard from you. This communication has completely faltered from both of us. I'm not just going to call out. I'll call out Rory too. It's not just all Logan. It's the both of them. Zero communication. But a 5-second phone call just to like establish what is going on here. Are we actually done? Am I in the clear to potentially see other people? And Rory could have said, yeah, you know what? Go do you. I'm fine. Whether we're on a short-term break, whether we're on a long-term break, go have your fun. Or she could have said, hey, you know what? We're taking some time apart, but I would still really appreciate it if during this time apart, we both agreed that we are not going to see and or sleep with other people, and just have some parameters for what those boundaries are going to be during that time apart. But Logan made zero effort to reach out and try and obtain any of that information before just going and doing whatever it was that he was going to do during those off weeks. There was no consideration for Rory in that regard, when, again, all it would have taken was just a really quick establishment of what is going on here. Are we done? Are we not? Just even talk to me for a couple of seconds about it. And again, Rory didn't do it either, but at least she was just, you know, not going and sleeping around and just having all of this fun before checking back in with Logan to say like, hey, would this potentially be something that hurts you, or is going to, you know, have something that you're upset about because you think that we're still together? And let's just figure that out first before we start doing these other things and having these, you know, affairs outside of what is potentially our still, you know, on a hiatus relationship. No, Logan, no. Check in and find out first. But you made zero effort. And it just tells me and shows me that at that moment in time, you had no regard for how Rory could have still been feeling. You were just looking to have the fun that you wanted to have and just go do you.
See, I don't know that that's entirely fair, because Logan even said it. He was like, I was depressed. Like, I was missing you. I didn't know what to do. In my mind, we were broken up. That's what I thought the fight was. I thought that's what the separation was. Do you believe that I honestly thought we weren't together? He honestly believed that. And so his intention was not to just be like, oh, I'm just going to go have my fun. He was looking for emotional soothing in those girls, because he was like, these are people who I'm familiar with. This is comfortable for me. There's no chance of emotional connection because I'm not looking for emotional connection. I'm grieving. I lost something. I effed up. We effed up, and I'm looking for an escape from that. And so I think it's the only way. Again, he was ill-equipped emotionally. He's been like neglected his whole life. He hasn't been taught the right way to do things. Yeah, he's immature. He's not always the best person, but like he stepped up for her, and then he thought that their relationship was over. This was the first time he'd ever gone out on a limb for anyone, and he thought it was done. And Rory didn't correct that perception whatsoever. She just let it lapse. If she really cared about it and about him and about making that relationship work, she should have reached out and been like, "Hey, like I know we're taking some time, but like I'm not seeing anyone else. I would prefer if you didn't see anyone else." Like there was no communication. But these are like a 20 and a 22-year-old who like have never been in this situation before. And like, you know, can we say that we wouldn't have done the same thing and just like let that fall off the hook? Like you've only been dating a couple of months. It's your first like major relationship. You're kind of emotionally ill-equipped from effed up parents. And then a massive fight happens and you think you're broken up and you haven't spoken for a month. Like, what does that say about this relationship to you? And the other thing is, I think it's, you know, like, Mary, you're such a prude when it comes to like, just because Logan finds comfort in sex, we shame him for that. We are slut shaming him when we say like, oh, how dare you like sleep with 2 girls in 1 month? Like, as long as they're consenting adults, I don't care how many chicks he sleeps with. Like it shouldn't matter. It's very puritanical to be like, oh, like it's so gross of you to do this. And so I really don't fault him. I really think he was looking for an emotional distraction, or like a not emotional, because like I don't think he was connected to these girls. I think that's why he chose his sister's friends, because he didn't want anyone who was going to catch any feels. I think he was just lost and hurting and unsure and lonely, and he hadn't heard anything from her to the contrary. And you know, it sucks, but like I've ghosted and been ghosted where it's like, oops. Like it's not always the most comfortable thing. And these are not 2 mature adults. Like they're adults in the sense that they're allowed to vote, but they are not fully formed, fully baked, mature adults with lots of experience to know that it takes a little bit more to confirm this breakup. But again, if I hadn't heard from a romantic partner in a month, I would not have any delusions that we were still a couple. That is literally delusional.
Right. But again, it takes 2 seconds to check in and just confirm that. Hey, Rory, are we together? Are we not? Just, you know, and then if you even make that attempt to reach out, whether it's through a text or whether it's through a phone call, just to say like, hey, what is going on with us? Are we still together? Is this still a thing? If you send that message and then Rory still does not reply, even then I would say, okay, you know what, Logan, you have your answer. Because if what she cared at that point in time, she would deign to give you a reply and just confirm to you, yes, we are, no, we aren't. I would even take the lack of response as like the go ahead to say like, okay, we're clearly not together. She's not giving me time of day anymore. And again, they both should have been a little bit better in that communication within that month off. Like it goes both ways, you know, 2-way street here. I am not faulting one and dismissing the other, but at least make the attempt to just check back in with this person, considering that you know that she in the past had asked you for exclusivity and had said, hey, I don't want this to be a casual thing anymore. I don't want us seeing, well, and you specifically because she wasn't doing it as much, but I don't want us having multiple partners at the same time while we're together. I just want it to be, you're my person, I'm your person. We are just seeing and sleeping with one another. And so he knew that she had asked for that and that she would probably be very uncomfortable and upset that he was now going back to being his old self, sleeping again with the bridesmaids, which I can understand why that choice was made also, because again, it's women that you are not going to get emotionally attached to and start having to, again, reconcile feels for when you are still just hung up on Rory and feeling really depressed about how that ended. But you didn't ask for any confirmation whatsoever, and you had to know that your actions were going to upset her if she found out about them, which she did. And then all you could say was just like, oh, well, I was never going to tell you.
But
Which
at that
hurts
point,
her even more.
But he didn't know that they were going to get back together. It took him time to process that and come back to her with his tail between his legs and say, look, like, I'm sorry, I love you, I want to be with you. At that point, he thought they were broken up, and he didn't know that she would take him back. And so, and the other thing about that is, like, it goes back to the conversation in one of the previous parts where it's just like, is truth always the answer? Like, would that have been information that Rory actually needed to know going forward in a relationship? Because, like, if they were on a hiatus, then what he does with other girls, as long as there's no emotional connection there, is of no consequence to her. Again, as long as they were safe and he didn't pick up any, you know, any STIs or anything, then, like, it's just, again, super puritanical. And it goes back to this idea of she doesn't own him. Even if she asked for exclusivity in the past, if they are no longer in contact, what does he owe her? Especially, like, if he thinks they're broken up, and or he intends to stay broken up, or thinks that they are going to stay broken up, then, you know, he's not just going to stay celibate until she finally deigns to say something to him or respond. We don't actually know, technically, whether or not they've talked. It's never explicitly said. We can only assume that they are completely ghosting on each other, but we don't know that he didn't text her and being like, I miss you, can we talk? And she didn't, like, because remember when she's mad at him after she finds out about the cheating, she, like, goes off to Stars Hollow and ignores him for several days. And then he's like, I didn't hear from you for days. Where were you? It is not out of character for her to completely ignore the people that she wants to. And I really wouldn't be surprised if she hadn't, or if she had, I wouldn't be surprised if she had done that to him. And it's one of those things where it's like, oh, Rory's the good girl because she didn't sleep around behind Logan's back, but he's the devil because they, like, he thought that them not talking in a month meant that their relationship was over. Like, it's just this, like, double standard of, oh, he's just a man whore who wants nothing but sex and doesn't care about people's feelings. No, I think he really truly does care about feelings. And, you know, he goes to her contrite a couple of weeks later after he's decided that, like, no, I'm going to do what it takes to get her back. He wouldn't have to get her back if they were still together.
Like, right, but give me some sort of confirmation that what you just said happened. Maybe he did text her and said, hey, can we talk? Do you, like, you know, can we try and work this out? If I had confirmation that he had reached out, whether, again, through, like, a text, a phone call, an email, and it went unresponded on Rory's part, which would not surprise me in the slightest because she has ghosted Jess for an entire summer in the past. That's Rory Gilmore for you, ladies.
That too.
Ladies and gentlemen, it would not surprise me had she done that to Logan. And again, if we had confirmation of that and he did not get any response from his attempts to reach out to her, then okay, you do you, Logan. She is obviously not giving you the time of day. She is being very dismissive of you and your emotions when you are trying to make an effort to reconnect and figure something out. And in that situation, I would be okay with Logan then being like, go do you. And I don't even care. It's not a numbers game for me. Go sleep with one girl. Go sleep with 10. Go sleep with 100 at that point. Whatever you want to do, again, as long as everyone that you were sleeping with, it's all consensual. Everything is, you know, gravy. And again, that you're being safe and not just, you know, picking up some stuff that you don't want to get. Have fun, dude. That's life, you know. Live it up in whatever way that you want to, but we never got confirmation of that. All we know is that there was no communication whatsoever. And Rory is left having to come back to this being like, oh, well, I didn't think that's where we were at this point in time. You seemingly never talked to me again that we know of. And now I'm left having to contend with the fact that you had quite a few interactions during this time apart, which makes me feel bad because, again, it was exactly what I didn't want for us. And I can understand, again, and I agree with the fact that, like, there's no ownership within relationships. Everybody is free to do what they want to here, but there was no effort put in on either one of their parts to check in with one another. And
that we know of.
That we know of. And again, without that being confirmed to us, I can't sit here and feel okay and say that it is right for Logan to have done what it did, knowing that Rory has asked him in the past to avoid that behavior because that's not what she wanted for their relationship anymore. he had to know, again, barring that confirmation that that was going to hurt her and upset her. And if you want to make the claim that Logan, genuinely has feelings for people and cares about Rory, which I will also agree, and I believe that he does, you don't turn around and do something like that without checking in with her first.
Again, I don't know what he owes her after a month of not talking. Like, I can't reconcile the idea of, like, again, it's if Rory had just texted him or responded to him, otherwise, I just don't think she gets to get on her high horse when she also contributed to the situation in whatever way that she did. But now I feel like we're spinning our wheels. I don't know that we're going to agree on this. So in the chat, in the comments, tell us what you think. Let's move on to the next part of this, which is, okay, what I will say for sure about the situation is that I don't love how Logan dealt with it in the aftermath. I really don't. I understand some of his points, but I think he could have, like, I wanted to see an apology from him regardless. Like, I'm sorry about our big fight. I'm sorry that you're hurt by this. Your feelings are completely valid. Like, I'm sorry that my decision to seek comfort in the arms of other people is upsetting to you. But he was not gaslighting her in that moment. People are not using that term correctly when they use it here, because it refers to an invalidation of your opinions and feelings and making you think you're crazy or overreacting or too sensitive. In this instance, Logan was explaining his side of the story. He was speaking only for himself, saying, I thought we were broken up. I thought that's what this was. And like, he's not saying you're being crazy, like you're overreacting to this, you're totally wrong. So he's sort of in this middle ground where he's not gaslighting her. He's just explaining his side. He's explaining his perspective. He's explaining how he interpreted their big fight and their lack of communication for, like, it was 4 weeks between Halloween and Thanksgiving. And then even after Thanksgiving, Rory still didn't go to him to clear things up. She let it stand, this news from Honor. She didn't go to him to be like, hey, I didn't think we were broken up. Let's talk about this. Like, is this truly what you want? Or like, what's the deal here? She still didn't make any moves to do that. But point being, I think he genuinely thought that was the end of their relationship. And like, would I have loved to be in Rory's position? No. But like, looking at the facts being what they are, I'm just like, oh, I wouldn't have a lot of legs to stand on if I ghosted my partner for 4 weeks and then expected exclusivity from them, because the expectation of exclusivity is within the bounds of the relationship. And if the relationship is fractured and is no longer occurring, then is exclusivity expected? Or not expect, like, I think maybe it was on Rory's part, which is, again, a little insane, a little delusional, to expect someone that you're not actively talking to for weeks on end to expect any kind of, like, oh, well, like, he definitely can't hook up with anyone after we break up for like several months. He's not allowed to do that. No girls during a separation. Like, I feel like I'm so hyped that I've completely lost my train of thought.
No, it's okay.
Like,
look, it's nothing new that Rory Gilmore has serious, and I will be you and I both will be the first person to say it. Rory Gilmore has some serious and very troubling and problematic issues with possession over her romantic partners and the men in her life. Holy moly. If there was ever a reason to step foot into therapy, that's probably top of the list for her. You've got to work on that and do better. These people are not owned by you. They're not your Dean. They're not your Logan. They're not your Jess. They are human beings with autonomy. Logan was expressing his, which I know that's your argument to make here. But again, he did need to come back and own up to his behavior, knowing that it had affected Rory. There definitely, absolutely, I agree, needed to have been some reconciliation there and accountability for his actions and saying, listen, I know this has mattered a lot to you in the past. I know that it upsets you now to learn all of this information about what I have done in these weeks off. I just want to let you know that I am apologetic about it for how it has made you feel. Let's have better communication about it going forward, so that in the event that we decide we either need to continue on with this break or get back together, and there's another hiatus down the line within this relationship, let's have better expectations of what we're going to want from each other during those periods of taking time off from one another. But there was none of that. It was just, I'll give him credit for like the little bit of accountability with how it made Rory feel, and that he was, regretful of that. But there should have been just a better and more well-rounded apology, as if to say, you're someone who I care about, who has been a previous partner, who still had, there was a lot of like misconstrued notions about what this still was and how it was still ongoing. I'm sorry for that. Let's be better at communicating about that moving forward. But again, I get it, because, and it's the age thing too. Like, to expect that from a 22-year-old, which you probably should. I mean, to an extent, there needs to be.
Most of the guys I know who were like 22, 23 didn't know how to do any of this.
I will say this. Not in full force. Like, that was going to be my fault. Like, not in full force. Like, I understand, you're not going to be, Dr. Drew over here or whatever, and you're just like a relationship guru and you know exactly what's going on, and you've read dating books and, done the introspection that like Luke Danes has done at previous points in time. But at the same time, you're also not a 14-year-old boy anymore. There have been at least a few years of, dating women, getting into relationships, having some experience and a knowledge base of that. I think where Logan also obviously comes up short is just the fact that, he didn't have any father figure to really guide him or advise him on that. If anything, his family was just emotionally neglectful of him. So of course he's going to seek out compassion in other ways like this, when Rory might not do that, because she's always been, well loved by her mother, by the town. She's never had to like come up against that emotional neglectfulness that Logan has dealt with his entire life. And
she's sexually repressed. Just go throw that in
there. So I get how this is hard for Logan as a 22-year-old guy, but also as someone who just has really never been shown, not even like genuine romantic love up until that point, but even familial love, even like the love of having like a good friend or a cousin or a sibling. Like, he's just been void of all of it. So he has to try and, like, this is what he's doing. He's just trying to obtain it in any way that he can, because that void is still there and so present in his life, but it's to the detriment of Rory. And he needed to own up to that a little bit better than he did.
Yeah, I would have liked to see him take more responsibility and be more apologetic. But just like going back to what you said about like Rory being possessive over the guys in her life, right after she finds out about this, she goes to that student bar in New Haven and she gets snippy with the waitress and she's like, I'm sick of people touching my stuff. And it's like, Rory, like it's just the peak of her entitlement and her immaturity for her to be so possessive when she has just been complicit in the lapse of this relationship, yet still has expectations of fidelity from a guy she cast aside and would not talk to. Like, she could have stepped up at any moment. Like, they were playing a game of chicken, which is stupid, but like, she could have been the bigger person to stand up and say, hey, this is the deal. Let's work on this, or let's end it, and just cut that. But she's deflecting onto him all the responsibility. She's just making herself the victim in something that she contributed to the context of in the first place. And she's not recognizing that. She's just reverting to that position of like, he was mine and you can't have him and he can't have anyone else. I'm the only one. I am the special one. He's not allowed to have sex with anyone else because I'm too special. And it's just, it goes back to everything I've been saying in the last couple parts about, his sex life didn't start with her and it didn't end with her. It might if they ever get back together. Revival 2.0. But like, she doesn't have exclusive rights over his sexual exploits when they are not like when the terms of their relationship are tenuous. So,
But never
there's all of that.
distinctly laid out. That's my problem.
I mean, but does it always have to be so explicit, or can a month separation with zero contact and no clarity be construed as, well, we are not together, and
On a
therefore
case
we
by
are
case
at least
basis, I won't dismiss it. On a case by case basis, yeah, sometimes I think that would be the end result and a good conclusion that a party within a relationship could come to. For Rory and Logan, no, it's not going to apply here, considering what we know about how Rory is and what she's asked of Logan in the past.
but what she asked of him in the past, again, if their relationship is over, like,
She
it's
no, she doesn't think that. She doesn't know it. There's no
well, she does by
confirmation.
Thanksgiving. She does by Thanksgiving, and that's when Logan sleeps with Walker. By then, she
I
knows.
almost heard, like, you say, like, Wookiee there. I was gonna be like, wrong Wookiee, wrong character, but go on.
Wrong time. Timey-wimey things. No, like, Walker says around Thanksgiving, which to me is like, Thanksgiving weekend or shortly thereafter. And then he doesn't sleep with Claude until Christmas because she mentions eggnog. So those two are about a month apart. It's unclear. It seems like he fooled around with Alexandra in there somewhere, but they didn't like have sex. It was more just other stuff. I'm not going to go into detail there. But like, Honor called Rory on Thanksgiving, and Rory was like, okay, cool. And didn't even bother. She didn't even passive aggressively text him to be like, how dare you break up with me through your sister? He didn't hear from her again after that. And not until January did they run back into each other at Yale. So not only was there that initial 4 weeks, but there was an additional 6 weeks of radio silence from her and him. And it's like, again, it's all stupid and immature, and and neither of them comes out super clean here. But like I said, in terms of like the definitions of cheating and the terms of betrayal, I think Rory has betrayed Logan just as much as he's betrayed her. Just because his involves sex doesn't mean that like it's somehow worse. It's just because, again, we're such a puritanical society that we have all these hangups around sex and intimacy, and we think that like once we've been intimate with someone, like they shouldn't ever seek that anywhere else, even if we're separated. And it's the whole situation is very frustrating. But I sympathize with Logan in terms of like he hasn't heard anything either, and so they're both at fault. But if she's not willing to fight for her relationship, then what leg does she have to stand on in accusing him of betraying her when she's the one who's emotionally abandoned him?
He did the same though. Again, like I think we're both in agreement upon the fact that like you both did wrong to the other. You were both neglectful of the other. You both betrayed the other. In Logan's case, it was just the betrayal in Rory's mind became physical as opposed to just an emotional betrayal and a lack of communication. But it still is there and it exists, and we need to be able to recognize that and call Logan out on it.
Again, I think he should have been way more apologetic and way more like validating of her in that moment, because yeah, she's allowed to be a little hurt that he sought comfort in the form of sex with other people. Like that can be tough to handle, but let's move on, because something that is unequivocally cheating is when Rory goes to Jess in Philly. She drives 3.5 hours, something like that, from New Haven to Philadelphia while Logan is out of town, and kisses Jess without telling him that she's still with Logan. And then she breaks down and is like, I couldn't even cheat on him like he cheated on me. She specifically went out of her way to hunt down an ex who was the crux of their initial fight. This is kind of like Lorelai going back to Chris. I'm just making these connections. And she explicitly goes to him and uses him, and praise be to Jess actually doing some growing up and some self-reflection and being like, I don't deserve this, Rory. Like, you came here alone to Philly. I thought everything was fixed. like, why are you doing this to me? I don't deserve this. And like, good for you, Jess, for standing up for yourself. But like, again, it just goes to show that Rory is avoidant, passive aggressive, immature, and
manipulative.
Did I say vindictive already? Because vindictive.
Louder for the people in the back, please.
Vindictive. You know, just trying to get revenge on him in this pettiest of ways with her ex who abandoned her. And it's just like, again, with the therapy, why are you still not seeing that school psychologist? Because he might have been able to help you with some of this stuff, help you through the big feelings, and maybe helping you see that you're potentially equally at fault here. Like think about it like a civil lawsuit. I'm not entirely sure about Canada quite as much because our system is similar to yours, but I haven't sat in a lot of civil courts. It's a lot of civil matters don't go to trial. So I was, for anyone who doesn't know, I was a court reporter for almost a year. And so I've sat in on a lot of criminal cases, bail, superior court matters, small claim stuff. But I know that in the US, that civil liability can be apportioned as a percentage, right? So, for example, recently, Gwyneth Paltrow was sued by a guy who claimed that she hit him while they were at, I think it was Deer Valley in Utah, so like this big fancy ski resort. And they went to trial over this, and they had, you know, physicists and like accident recreation specialists and people to testify about like whether it was possible or likely that the injuries he sustained were caused by her. And they could have found that that accident was 50-50 liability, where it's like you're both at fault. And you can do this for car accidents and, you know, other types of personal injury. And you can be equally at fault. And so I think, you know, if we're looking at this in these sort of like contractual terms, or like the consideration that we owe to other people in preservation of their safety and their well-being, and like the liability is about equal in this one until Rory goes to Philly. And like, you know, imagine you're listening to this in court and you're trying to decide who's right here. I'm gonna be like, I'm siding with the guy, because like you wilded it out and you did that on purpose. You knew what you were doing. He thought you were broken up. He was like, honestly, like sad, and he was unsure that like you would ever talk to him again. But then you got back together with him and cheated on him as revenge. Like, no, now you owe him for that. Like, now you're at least 60-40.
Yeah, I feel like you're just like flashing back to like your days in like a courtroom reporting, and I'm just over here being like, am I podcast recording right now or am I at work?
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, that's kind of the nature of my job, but I'm not gonna go there. But yes, Rory did become. I would agree in that, with that takeaway, that at that point in time she did become more complicit from a liability perspective in terms of like who's more at fault here. You both were not communicating well to begin with, but now Rory, out of spite, which again is just unsurprising because, you know, she's always going to try and, you know, possession, these people belong to me. I'm gonna like, but it's disastrous now that it's point in time. She's like, I'm gonna try and hurt Logan in the way that he hurt me, and I'm gonna use an ex to do it. And it's not the first time. Rory Gilmore is also just masterclass on how to use people for your benefit and in ways that are going to be just devastating and emotionally harmful to them. She did it with Dean. She's doing it here with Jess. You know, for her to go there and just say like, I'm here because I kind of want to use you to hurt Logan and get back at him. Like, holy moly. And just for Jess was right to just be like, I deserve better than this. You are just using me. He probably recognizes the behavior because it's exactly the same thing that Rory did to Dean when she was trying to get with Jess. She was just using Dean to always make Jess jealous, to try and like, you know, get him to admit to feelings and just, you know, become hers, so to say. So he probably recognizes that behavior as something that she has done to other guys in the past. So it is absolutely right for him to be like, I don't deserve this. But it's also weird that he ended off with like saying like, oh, you know, if you want to go back and tell him that you actually did something with me, like that's fine. It's like, don't encourage that behavior for her, dude. This is exactly the last thing that she needs. You need to tell her, I don't deserve this. It's not okay for you to do that. You cannot go back to Connecticut and claim that we did anything. You know, even the kiss was just something that she obviously instigated, you know, that he was just unaware that she was even going to be there or coming down for that reason. But he needs to be like, don't go home and say that we did anything because we didn't. And I can't have Logan thinking that just because it's going to make you feel better that like you got back at him in that way. So for him to leave her off with that and just say like, yeah, you can tell him we did something if it's going to, you know, go get him. It's like, no, Jess, you're perpetuating her like abhorrent behavior. Way to go. I just,
Yeah, people give him all the credit for the Yale thing, but they don't dock any points for that. And I'm like, biased. Yeah, a couple Esther Perel quotes on this front. There is an art to taking just enough revenge. Revenge may not always be sweet, but occasionally it hits a sweet spot that empowers the hurt party and allows a couple to put the past behind them. It's important, speaking of law, it is important to distinguish between retributive justice and restorative justice. The former seeks only punishment, the latter engages in repair. So, you know, if in the process of getting even, you end up hurting yourself more than you punish the other, you gain nothing. The art of restorative justice is to elevate yourself rather than simply denigrating those who hurt you. And so, yeah, that was Rory's revenge fantasy. It was like, I'm going to go get with Jess and screw Logan. You know what I mean? Like, whatever. He's off in Costa Rica doing whatever. But I think potentially that she felt just bad enough about that. And it clarified things for her. You know, that's when she says to him, like, I love him despite the struggles that we've had and whatever he's done without taking accountability herself, if you'll notice. She recognizes that she still loves him enough to try. And that's when she goes from retribution to restoration. And it also happens to coincide with when he gets hurt. And it starts to put their relationship in sharp relief as to how important he is to her and how willing she now is to make it work and to put this behind her. I think she feels maybe like she's karmically evened the score and she doesn't have to say anything about it and just be like, oh, pot calling kettle black. She doesn't tell Logan that she goes to Philly and kisses Jess. So, you know, is 100% frankness about our romantic histories always the correct answer? Is it always the right thing to do to say something just because it's honest, even if it's not kind or helpful or constructive to a relationship? Did she need to tell Logan? Probably not. Did Logan need to tell her? Only if he got an STI. Like, well, he may have owed her maybe a little more, but like, I still think that like in the context of what happened with them, that like she doesn't have a leg to stand on. She doesn't get to play the victim when she was equally at fault. Her actions or lack thereof were just as impactful in what happened there. If she had done anything different, it wouldn't have happened that way. And so I'm like, you don't get to take a moral superiority here when you did the same thing he did. You are on an even playing field here. And you're allowed to be hurt. You're allowed to lick that wound for a little bit and be like, no, I don't love that happened. I don't love the idea of you with someone else. But if you're going to be that possessive, keep track of your possessions.
And it's even more harmful that she feels like I need to even the score here. Just the concept of scorekeeping within any relationship. No, it can never happen. Like you just yep,
wave the red flag. It's time once more. I'm surprised it hasn't come out yet this episode, but yeah.
Yeah, no, you can't be keeping score within the relationship. So just the ideology that she had at that point where she's like, he hurt me, I'm going to get it back in the same way. That will even out the score. It will make me feel better because now, like, you know, we're tied. We're on that same even playing field again. No. If a partner wrongs you, it doesn't mean that you wrong them back. And then we're good as gravy because now we both have hurt one another. So we're both just like miserable or horrible human beings who have, you know, done that to one another. So now we're just good. It's like, no. You need to understand that, like, your partner can hurt you. It doesn't mean you hurt them back. It means you either forgive them and try and work through it and maintain the relationship, or you decide that you forgive them, but you still don't want to be a part of it, or you just don't even offer any forgiveness whatsoever. And you just say, like, that hurt too much. I need to move on from this. I cannot be with you anymore. But you never try and, like, even out the playing field and say, like, tit for tat, scorekeeping all the time. And I feel like that's also just something that Rory does in so many of her relationships. And it's like, are you ever going to have a healthy one when you do that? No.
Nope. She doesn't recognize that. But okay, we've been going for an hour and we haven't even talked about the revival yet. So I vote we move on to that because obviously Rory and Logan repair their relationship. He goes off to London. They do the long distance relationship thing. He moves back to New York. He wants to start a life with her in San Francisco at the end of the day when things with his father's company don't work out. And then she turns down his proposal of marriage. But then, come 2016, we find out that she's been engaging in a prolonged affair with him and that he is engaged to another woman. And on top of that, she also has a boyfriend who she is, oh, shocking, neglectful of, and like doesn't even remember exists half the time.
I'm surprised she can remember his name.
Ugh. Somebody needs to, like, this sounds really bad, but like kneecap her horse. Yes. No horses were harmed in the filming of this podcast.
No, but it's like, she can't even go to breakfast without being like, ooh, I left him at home. I'm sorry.
It's so bad. But anyway, so in the research for this, I came across a broads.com article about reasons why women might cheat. And I feel like it's illuminating to go through each of them to maybe start to peel away the layers of how Rory has fallen so far by 2016. Number one, dissatisfaction in their relationship. And yeah, it's clear she's not satisfied with Paul. And I think cheating with Logan might be the catalyst to break it off. Like, this is her exit. She's using it as an exit strategy, much like it seems maybe Nicole did with Luke, which we covered in episode 2.
Yeah. But it still doesn't make it okay. Because, like, if Paul is not fulfilling your needs, just end it. I mean, and this is where Lorelai needs to step in and kind of give her the same advice that she gave when she was messing around with Dean and Jess. Like, and she said, listen, Dean, Jess, what are you doing here? You are not being fair to either one of them. If it's not going to be Dean, then break it off. If it's not going to be Jess, then don't even, like, start playing around or messing with his emotions. But just, like, decide whom you want to be with and then pursue that person. If Paul is not fulfilling your needs anymore, like, and you just want to try and re-stir things back up with Logan, that's fine. But let Paul know and don't torture the poor boy, which is what she does unnecessarily for months.
Yeah, I'm really disappointed with Lorelai in the revival. The fact that she doesn't, well, like, she says it flippantly. She's like, you have to break it off with that poor boy. She doesn't sit Rory down and be like, is this relationship what you want? If not, let him off the hook because this is not fair to him or to you, frankly. If this is not the one, let it go. So, yeah. Number 2, low self-esteem. And yeah, this one could fit because it seems like she's suffering from a loss of confidence. Her career is stagnating, and she wants to sort of revert to a happier time in her life when she felt like the world was her oyster. She wants to be with someone who remembers her from that time, who builds her up, who believes in her, someone who validates her talents. And while Paul seems like a perfectly nice guy and is supportive in what seems like a totally generic way, we don't know if he truly understands Rory or her career or her career woes the same way Logan does, because, you know, they're both in journalism. We don't know what Paul does. He's such a non-entity that, like, we have no idea what his situation is. And I think maybe Logan offers her some perspective on her career that Paul isn't able to provide. And he's just not able to give her the kind of confidence boost that she needs in that moment.
Yep, and that's fine. But again, if Paul cannot fulfill her needs In the same token that we said, don't go back to Dean just because he's like, a comfort zone for you. It doesn't mean that you go back to Logan for the same reason. Sometimes you just need to recognize this person isn't fulfilling my needs. But hey, why not try being single for a little while and working on yourself, Rory? How about that?
That is such a foreign concept to her. Number 3, emotional starvation. This may not just be sex, but emotional needs. We don't know if she and Paul are long distance, like what their situation is, how often they see each other. Maybe they're just not able to connect in some important way that keeps their relationship from achieving that next level of intimacy.
Maybe, but again, not a reason to string them along.
Yep. Number 4, anger or retribution. Paul doesn't seem like the cheating type, so I don't think it's that. But it might just be sort of a general sense of rebelliousness on Rory's part, especially because Logan has a new partner, and I don't think Rory can abide by that. She probably still has that, like, he's mine first kind of mentality. He's my Logan.
Oh my gosh. Cringe.
Yeah. Number 5, lack of excitement. Again, with her career stagnating, I think her trips to London provide that excitement for her. Paul is portrayed as being extremely vanilla, maybe not the most exciting kind of guy. He's too nice. It's like he's too boring. He's not memorable, I guess. And I think Rory is thinking back to a time when she was spontaneous and young and wild with the Life and Death Brigade. I think she dumped Dean because he wasn't like that either. Remember what she says about Jess, where it's just like, there's something about not knowing what someone's going to do that's really exciting. And I think maybe Paul is too predictable.
Yep. And that's fine. And if that is the type of person that Rory wants to be with, who is going to give her that spontaneity and that impulsivity, because it's exciting to her, that's fine. Paul is also going to be the right guy for somebody, because there is going to be someone out there who appreciates that stability and, the nice gestures, and someone who will appreciate that vanilla-ness to him. He just needs to find that person. Again, it doesn't seem like it's Rory, but for like the third time now, don't string him along just because.
Yeah. Number 6, sexual deprivation. We literally have no idea. We know Logan's in a long distance relationship, so maybe Rory, fills that need for him. And on Rory's part, we have no idea what Paul's sex drive is like. So that's just like really no idea. Number 7, loneliness. Again, don't know what Paul does for a living. Maybe he travels a lot. Rory travels a lot, and it seems like Logan is her outlet when she's in Europe. And Odette's in Paris. Seems like it, like somewhere in France for sure. So loneliness for both of them. Number 8, insecure attachment style. Need I say more?
No, you really don't.
Yeah. She's anxious. She's afraid of being abandoned. And she's also avoidant. She desires to maintain her independence at all costs, much like her mom. And so it's typical for people who have this kind of attachment style to seek out validation and closeness from an affair as a way to avoid intimacy in their primary relationship. So that's kind of a pattern that makes itself known. Number 9, midlife crisis. A little bit of that. I could see a little bit of that. She's having a reckoning at 32. She's at a place of a lot of upheaval. She's grieving. She's had to move out of Brooklyn. Her career is not getting off the ground anymore. So I think she's clinging to her past tighter and tighter.
Yeah, but again, not healthy. And it's just, the midlife crisis is going to be a thing for a lot of people. I mean, that's a commonality. But Rory was very much at a point where, again, a guy can't be the only thing that fixes that for you. Like, your career path has been so unstable. You were trying to make things work with Naomi Shropshire because that was really one of the only things that you could get. And then you defer back to like the Stars Hollow Gazette, because again, there's also like just a career void within her that she's trying to fill as well, and try and find like some meaning with like, why did I spend all this time in school and pursuing journalism and having this, be what I have wanted for most of my life, and now it's not panning out. So I need to reckon with that. Work on that first, maybe, and get that under your belt and like just figure out what your job and your career path is going to look like, and then bring someone into your life once that's a little bit more stable for you.
Yeah. Number 10, an underlying condition. I'm no licensed therapist, but I don't think Rory has any conditions per se. We don't see a ton of indicators for that. Perhaps some underlying anxiety. That's like the tap dancing is how we know that. But I'm not sure that she is like on the clinical scales of these things. But depressive episodes might trigger similar impulses. And the death of Richard could certainly have put her into a depressive episode. And so apparently the excitement of an affair stimulates the production of the same neurotransmitters as when we take antidepressants. So, you know, it could be a way for her to avoid that grief and sink into something that makes her feel good, to like release that dopamine and that serotonin and just, you know, make her feel alive.
Mm-hmm.
Number 11, opportunity. It seems like they met again in Hamburg and Rory was wearing her lucky dress. And I'm wondering if it was lucky for her in the sense of rekindling their romance, being the start of a better life path for her and like more happiness for her, like bringing them back together, her getting a child out of this reunion, and that child maybe being an important source of meaning for her moving forward. Just a little headcanon.
It's not a bad realization though, and I had never actually thought about that before, but yeah, maybe that was just a costuming choice even to reflect that, you know, this partnership was picking back up.
Yeah. And number 12, numbing difficult feelings. And again, we don't know when the affair started, but perhaps it was right around Richard's death. It's probably a coping mechanism. And we also see her partaking in other impulsive behaviors like drinking more. So it might just be a way of self-soothing for her. It's a lot of S's. So yeah, that's kind of that list. But yeah, let's dip into the Odette stuff a little bit more and talk about his relationship with her, because I am not a fan of this. Odette is a plot device. She's not a human being. The writers don't treat her like a human being. What she thinks or feels isn't ever taken into account. But just in general, the whole setup of this, the way Logan refers to it as a dynastic plan, leads me to believe that this was quasi-arranged by his family. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it goes back to the days when people weren't allowed to choose their own romantic partners and were forced to marry someone based on the desires of their family. Marriage was a way that elites could consolidate their power, accumulate and hoard wealth and resources, and, you know, just advance their own interests. And I think that's very much what his family is trying to do. And no other species, no other community has members that try to influence a person's choice of mate unless they're competing to get there first. And so it's just, it's so unfair. It's
horrible.
It's horrible. It is. Like I have a George Bernard Shaw quote here from, he wrote this long prologue to his play Getting Married, and it's like, it's fascinating. It's excellent. Go read it. It's free online. To impose marriage on two unmarried people who do not desire to marry one another would be admittedly an act of enslavement.
Yeah.
But by condoning what Logan's parents are doing and saying, yeah, you should marry Odette, like you're engaged, you should follow this through. We're condoning an ideal of marriage that's hundreds of years behind in social, political, psychological, and philosophical development. Like it's so gross to me that his family is interfering on that level and expecting him to marry for their own selfish ends, and that they're perpetuating this idea that has produced marriages like Shira and Mitchum's.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, Odette was always going to be someone where it's just like, she looks good on paper. And I don't care if you two ever genuinely fall in love with one another. If you do, great. If you don't, I still don't care, because at the end of the day, this is what is going to make the Huntsberger clan look the best. And genetically, if we want the line to continue, there might have even been like that also ass backwards notion of like, oh, well, that's who should father Logan's children. Which I just want to, like, that's makes me want to throw up.
Gross.
But
it's gross.
If that was the case, and I think it definitely is, because even the Huntsbergers have made, comments in the past about how like Rory was never going to be good enough. And then the Gilmores have that antiquated notion of like, of course she's good enough. She's a Gilmore. And it's like, now you take away Rory's autonomy because you're not even saying that she's good enough for who she is as an individual, but just because her name is going to do what it takes to get her there and allow her to deserve Logan as a partner. But if Odette and Logan continued on with this marriage, and foundationally there was never any love that ever grew out of it or became present, Logan is going to have to continue to do what he has done in the past and seek that comfort, physical or emotional, elsewhere. And that could potentially do Odette significant damage if she's just like, I understand that this marriage is what it is and how it came to be, but it still hurts me that you do that. Like, there's so much there that could just be so devastating to everybody involved.
Yeah, if they're not genuinely in love and compatible with each other, and this really is just sort of like a political or business marriage, Logan needs to get out of it ASAP. He needs to tell his family what's what and be like, it's 2016. We don't do this anymore. This is no longer the age of, the parents arranging the marriage and, the wife being a good little stay-at-home wife and mother. Like, I'm not following that path because my happiness is more important than whatever stupid business ventures you want to get into. And so I think he needs to stand up to his family and break things off with Odette before they actually get married. And, I've seen people online talking about him like, oh, he's just like that immature bachelor cheater playboy all over again. And the voice I'm hearing in my head is Rachel Green's mom from Friends. Once a cheater, always a cheater. And I don't necessarily think that's true. I think that his relationship with Rory is deeper and more satisfying than that. And that if they were to get together, that they would have a shot at exclusivity and fidelity if that was the explicit terms of their relationship. But I like to push back against the notion that Logan's just an immature playboy doing whatever he wants. Because, we don't really have evidence that he's cheating with anyone else, or that before he reunited with Rory, that he had any impetus to step out on that relationship. So, and I think that, again, we should have some empathy for him because they're clearly in a long distance relationship. They maybe don't see that much of each other. There could be any number of reasons why their relationship is not satisfying to him. All the familial pressure to do the right thing will end up making no one happy. And I don't think we should be rooting for that. So I really like, and again, we also don't know that they don't have an agreement to have some sort of open relationship, to just lean into the fact that like, yeah, we know that our parents set this up for business reasons, but maybe that doesn't preclude us from finding some happiness with other people. I mean, given that he's hiding her at a hotel and clearly exhibiting deceitful behaviors, I don't necessarily think that's the case, but we also don't know that maybe that's part of the parameters of it. Maybe it's like, it has to be at a hotel, and then he's just doing it with her at his place anyway. But, or that she's not cheating on him when she's at home in Paris. I think he's lonely and he's rebelling, and I think he's profoundly unhappy in this setup. And it's clear that his adoration of Rory runs too deep, and it's really hard for him to contend with the fact that this is his life now. And I think the same way that I think Logan unlocks something in Rory and unleashes this wild side, this and nostalgia for the past, where it's like, I want to go back to a time where I felt free and happy. I think Logan is in the same boat where he needs to be free to pursue his own desires, and he's not allowed to. And so I really think he needs to stand up to his family and be like, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to hurt her. I'm not going to stifle myself. I'm not going to give up my own freedom for you. I'm going to do what makes me happy. Rory is pregnant with his daughter. I mean, there has been some talk about, Amy saying that it'd be interesting if she had a son and to like see what the Gilmore Girls do with the boy. But I think ultimately they would choose for it to be a daughter and for that cycle to continue. But like, it's gotten to this point now where the boundary has been crossed. Unless Rory terminates the pregnancy, he has a child out there with another woman. That's going to put strain on his relationship and his family relationships. And like, I wouldn't, even as part of like a dynastic plan like this, I wouldn't necessarily want to go ahead with marrying someone when I know that they have a love child with someone that they cheated on me with. Like, that we were engaged and he slept with someone else and now she's pregnant and having that baby, and that baby is going to be out there somewhere. Like, that would be hard to contend with. Unless she's just like very open and very chill and is like, you know what? Cool. Let's all be one big happy family. But I doubt that, because that's not how their segment of society seems to work. That would be a huge humiliation for everyone. And so unless Rory doesn't go through with it, now they have to contend with this. And Logan has a big decision to make. And Rory needs to decide whether or not and to what extent she wants Logan in her daughter's life. And I think that she shouldn't block him out like her mom did with her dad, because she needs to reflect on the impact that had on her and realize that she shouldn't do that to her own child.
Yeah. How about some Revival 2.0 to answer everything that you just said? Because it's just, it's a perfect and excellent thought. That's how the show leaves us off with. Like, just, is the apple going to continue to, like, is it going to fall far from the tree, or is it just, going to be another cycle of what we saw with Lorelai and Rory? That's why we've talked about it before. That's why Rory goes to Christopher and says, do you have any regrets about, not being a part of my life? Like, those conversations are there and those nuggets are put in for us to exhibit the, like, Rory coming to the realization of, like, am I going to be Lorelai all over again with this child, or am I going to do better?
Yeah, exactly. And I just have like a few last points on Mitchum and Shira before we really need to wrap this up, because we're literally going to run out of recording time within a few minutes. So yeah, I just want to circle back to the fact that like Mitchum continues to mess around on Shira. And we know this because of Emily's stunning verbal take on Shira. And so, she's his respectable wife who does things for him the same way Emily does things for Richard. She's probably not someone that he really loves, and he feels an entitlement to sleep around and have his desires met by other people. And that's the kind of example that Logan has had. The environment he grew up in was just like that. That's how people engaged with each other. That's common among that kind of marriage, because if you don't love that person, then where is your devotion to them that keeps you devoted to them? There needs to be an active choice to stay loyal to your partner. And when your partner was not your choice, that's all that much more difficult. And so cheating has become normalized it seems, in their social circle because of the way that people are forced to interact. And I just think it's so hard to grow up neglected by your parents, viewed only as a status symbol for them, only as an inheritor of their legacy, and never being seen as a person for who you are, and never seeing a loving, committed relationship that didn't have some level of deception in it. It's so sad. And not only that, but like, as stunning as that takedown was, the fact that Emily wields Mitchum's infidelity like a weapon against Shira in order to get what she wants and to like sting her emotionally. She twists the knife in the most intimate of ways to gain social power over an adversary. And that's, I still think it's just it's a well-written thing and I love it still. But like, when you kind of go to that deeper layer and think about it from a perspective of cheating and marital loyalty and fidelity, it stings. It hurts. But okay. Do you have anything on Mitchum and Shira, or should I give my like wrap up quote and clear us out?
Send us home, girl.
All right. In conclusion, money, babies, STDs, premeditation, carelessness, shame, self-doubt, gossip and judgment. the particular person, gender, time, place, social context. If this brief compendium of love's horror stories shows us anything, it's that while every act of betrayal shares some common features, every experience of betrayal is unique. We do no one a service when we reduce affairs to sex and lies, leaving out the many other constitutive elements that create the nuances of the torment and inform the path to healing. And I think that's just a beautiful Esther Perel quote that sort of sums all this up, where it's like, we don't do anyone any favors by just like rushing to judgment and not taking context into account and just being too black and white in our thinking about all of this.
Yeah, I concur. For all of the excellent thoughts that you and I have had, I feel like we also just need to call out Esther as like the MVP of this series that we've done on cheating, because holy moly, again, like just her insight into everything A to Z with regards to relationship, marriages, again, infidelity. I haven't even read or listened to as much of it as you have, but even from what I have absorbed and taken in, like, it blows my mind. And just kudos to you, Miss Pearl.
Yes. She's excellent. Go read her. But yeah, so that closes out this 4-part series on cheating. I still have so many notes and things I didn't say. So
As is
who knows? Yeah, they'll probably filter into other episodes, or who knows? Maybe we'll do cheating part 5 in the future. Part 5, Electric Booga Live.
Maybe.
Doesn't work as well when you get into those higher numbers. But yeah, so that wraps us up on cheating. Next up is, I was reading a lot of books for this particular episode. I was reading one called The All or Nothing Marriage, and there was some talk of family values in that book. And it led me to realize that, like, Gilmore Girl's really not that family friendly. And I maybe don't mean that in the way that you anticipate. And so you'll just have to come back next week and see what I really mean by that, and come back for more interesting sociological analysis of Gilmore Girls from a perspective of family values.
Yep. In the meantime, if you want more Gigi content, please go back and watch, parts 1, 2, 3 of this series that we've done on cheating. We have, I think, hopefully had a lot of good things to say that are just really thought-provoking. And if you have any takes on any of those videos, please leave us a comment and let us know. A lot of this, especially this episode, got really spicy, but we also want to hear what you have to say as viewers and, just admirers of this show as well. So please leave us all of your thoughts.
Yeah, exactly. And tickets are now live for the Firelight Festival in Guilford, Connecticut, October 18th to 20th. There will be a link in our description to that website. It's like the best Gilmore weekend you could ever imagine, with just the warmest, most welcoming Gilmore community. Amazing cast and crew from the show who always have great stories to tell, and they're so nice, and they really want to meet you. They want to talk to you. They're so happy to just hang out and have dinner with everyone and walk around amongst the people. And it's just the best time. If you decide to join us, we might bring our Gilmore's Against Humanity game back for another ride and have some fun with that. So yeah, definitely go check out that link. Join the Facebook group. If you have any questions about the event, anything you want to know, let us know. And we're happy to give you any info or any help that we can offer you.
Yeah. And again, we hope to see you there. In the meantime, again, just come back and join us next week. We promise to have a lot more content moving forward that we think is just going to be really enlightening, that I don't feel like has ever really been broached on this show before. So we're just, hoping to have like a fresh take on anything for you. And in the meantime, please just remember to do all of these YouTube things for us. Please like this video, subscribe to our channel. It's one click below. It really helps us out. Share this video with your friends and family or other GG lovers. And just always leave us your comments again with those hot takes. We're excited to hear anything that you have to say as well.
Exactly. And on that note, we will see you next Friday for dinner.
Take care, y'all.
Bye.